Play with All Fired Up Tuesday. The dialogue has been juicy today, nonstop on the championship game, which was a stunning dud, a grotesque no-show, a nightmarish disappointment by Gonzaga. And we've heard from so many Baylor fans, and I love that. Baylor fans, Baylor alum. That has been a really fun portion of the show. I'm just stunned how Baylor just smoked Gonzaga. So we've been all over the championship game. The undefeated season for Gonzaga is dead. The dream is dead. It died hard. I mean, this was a pathetic, embarrassing no-show. That's what it was. Suggs missed that three, offensive foul, second foul on the bench, 3 minutes in. Baylor was up 9-0. You know, they destroyed Gonzaga on defense, the offensive glass. Kispert was terrible. Timmy was worse. 14 turnovers. Season low 70 points, only 5 threes, lowest number of threes they hit in the entire tournament. Just a disgraceful performance. Can't wait for these results in the Schein Box question. Gonzaga's 2020-2021 season was. Have some fun filling in the blank there. The NFL conversation has been amazing today after the Sam Darnold blockbuster. And listen, I always vote in the poll question. Always. That's a rule. I'm not just a host with great hair. I'm also a voter. And I voted for the Panthers. They won the Sam Darnold trade. Now, for the Jets to win, Zach Wilson has to hit here. And they got to hit on these other draft picks. They could have had a haul. If they put that number 2 pick for sale, they could have kept the number 2 pick and kept Darnold and given him some help at receiver or Kyle Pitts or an offensive tackle. But, Joe Douglas hitched his wagon to his guy. Remember, he didn't draft Sam Darnold. I think Darnold is only going to be 24. He's going to be a rock star in Carolina. Remember when we talked to Dan Jeremiah or talked to Phil Simms on the critically acclaimed Adam Schein podcast? Make sure you subscribe and download it and listen to it. They were obsessed, absolutely obsessed with Darnold away from New York. Remember when I interviewed Dan Jeremiah at 2017 Combine, I asked him what the buzz was. He said the USC quarterback for 2018. So, I think that Darnold is going to thrive. I think this is a major win without question for Carolina. He was, beaten down by New York, bad coaching, bad roster. The Jets didn't help the number 3 overall pick. I think that Sam Darnold's going to be Ryan Tannehill away from Adam Gase. So I am all in here on what this means for Carolina, what it means for Darnold. I think it's just juicy. I think it's delicious. I think it's sensational. And we talked about the Panthers and what they're going to do with Teddy Bridgewater, mentioned a couple of teams. I don't think Teddy's going to be a starter this year, and I no regrets if you're Carolina choosing Teddy over Cam Newton. Cam has proven over the last 3 years he's shod. But, Teddy could be a 1A somewhere or a veteran backup depending upon his mindset. He's being given permission to shop himself for another team. So that's been a big topic for discussion. Carolina at 8 has been a big topic for discussion. We mentioned the Mets. That was the big theme from baseball last night, blowing that lead against the Philadelphia Phillies and wasting another Jacob deGrom gem. Couple of other quickies from baseball before we get back to your calls. How about the Dodgers, man? They had that loss on opening day in just mind-numbing, can't believe it happened fashion. Look at their pitching and domination since. By the way, the A's can't win a ball game if they tried. I told you this is going to be a historically great L.A. Dodgers team. Giancarlo Stanton hit a grand slam, still traveling 471 feet for my New York Yankees. So, that was certainly needed. Orioles, we laughed out loud how they swept the pathetic, embarrassing Red Sox. Now they're facing a real team, and they're back to being the squad that Fangraph said would have a 0% chance of winning. Fernando Tatis, we're waiting on an update here. So he's going to be reevaluated today. And obviously he crumpled to the ground as he had this violent swing and miss, the shoulder, the old subluxation, that didn't look good. And we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to play doctor. Occasionally you do on television, but it did not look good for Fernando Tatis, one of the great young superstars in baseball. By the way, how about baseball suspending Nick Castellanos a couple of games? What did he do? Don't start acting all hip and cool in the right way of let the kids play And, he does the little shimmy, and, he's kind of skipping up the first baseline when he hits that bomb. Then all hell breaks loose later in the game against the Cardinals. I am on Team Reds, Team Castellanos completely. He didn't start that brawl when he slid into home. He did not start that brawl. That's a terrible job by baseball. Just a terrible job by baseball. And look, Rob Manfred moves the All-Star game out of Atlanta for all the right reasons, and he rewards Colorado, an ownership group that doesn't have any business being in baseball, and dismantled the team, and they're not trying to win. That's who gets the All-Star game? Rob Manfred. I mean, it's just completely ridiculous. Carolina hired Hubert Davis, and listen, I thought this was a job that would go outside the family, or you could go outside the family. I happen to love Hubert Davis, and I loved him as a Knick. I loved him in Carolina. Love him on ESPN. Love him as an assistant. They've got the family thing going in Carolina, and Roy wanted him, and they wanted him, and Hubert Davis is a great coach. He's a killer. Don't let that amazing, babyish smile fool you. And he bleeds Carolina, and, they make history, first African-American coach for North Carolina basketball, which I think is wonderful. And, I thought they could have picked any coach they wanted, but, Carolina, they're going to stay with that family. So I'll be not what I would have done, but I'm going to be very open-minded here because I love my guy, Hubert Davis. Calls have been off the charts amazing today. Casey in Montana, our good friend. Next on Sports.
Mr. Schein, how we doing today?
Casey, always a treat when we get to hear your voice. What's cooking?
Oh, not much. Going into that national championship game last night, that was roughly a matchup 2 years in the making. You could have said last year that both Baylor and Gonzaga were the two top teams going into the tournament as well. So last night we had all the expectations for a great heavyweight matchup, and Baylor had other plans. I mean, they just absolutely took it to Gonzaga, kind of gave them a taste of their own medicine.
Listen, I think that's a great way to phrase it. And this was years in the makings, and you're not being subject to exaggeration in saying that. And Casey, you know this because you follow it all year round. Not only years in the making, but this team was beyond up for it and ready all season long. Look, if it wasn't for the and that's always tough for all of us, right? With COVID pauses and then how a player, how a team responds after that. It kind of throws us off a little bit on evaluating some teams, but Baylor got back. And once they got back and they got playing at that level that they were capable, you knew they were going to be in that championship mix. And they've just been all tournament long just destroying the opposition with their defense, their three-headed monster. Coach Drew's amazing. And there's a reason why they were the second-best team after the rankings on Selection Sunday. I thought all year they were a top-3 team. I don't want to sound, like I'm trying to rewrite my own history. I thought Michigan, when Michigan was Michigan before the liver's injury, I thought it was Gonzaga, Michigan, Baylor, but Baylor was always in that conversation for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I had Michigan at one point in the season, too, as my number 2 team.
Yep.
Before the liver's injury, they absolutely were playing just as good as anybody. And Baylor, you questioned when they came back off the COVID pause if they could get back to the level they were playing at before. But, man, they hit their stride at the right time in the tournament, and they just absolutely destroyed the field. I mean, last night could not have been any more of a shock. I was hoping for a great game. And Mark Few said it in his press conference. Gonzaga, they're used to being the aggressor. They're used to just absolutely coming out and smothering teams off the opening tip. But that's what Baylor did to them last night. They applied the pressure right off the tip, and they never looked back. And, I mean, it was honestly one of the more impressive performances in the title game in college basketball history, in my opinion. It was
you're 100% right. You're 100% right. And I was dead wrong on everything last night, but really on the pressure. Because, Casey, you're right. It's not like I was just making that up. That's what Gonzaga does brilliantly. They apply that pressure. They demoralize you early, And when Baylor controlled that right from the jump, I looked around the room at my kids. I said, we're in trouble here. Gonzaga is in major trouble because that's so on. You could tell right from the get-go they were feeling the pressure as opposed to applying it. And you do that against a deep and well-coached and well-rounded basketball team, you're dead on arrival. And that's exactly, stunningly, and Casey, brilliant stuff as always, appreciate the call. That's what Gonzaga was last night, just dead on arrival. Alex in Miami, our good friend. Next, Schein on Sports.
Adam, my wallet's feeling great today, taking that money line on Baylor last night.
Oh, Alex. Good for you, my friend. Good for you.
I took them. I know it was back and forth, but I called you yesterday, and I told you it all depended on how they were shooting their threes, their defense, their guard play with Butler, Teague, Mitchell. I mean, Gonzaga couldn't even stay on the court with them. They were smothering, like you just said right now. That defense from the start. I mean, and it looks like Gonzaga was a little tired. They look slow. They got Timmy in foul trouble. They got Suggs in foul trouble. And, I mean, you knew at halftime, even that little run that they made, it was still down 10. I just had that feeling that there's no way that they're going to come back and beat Baylor here.
And, Alex, here was my feeling. Once it hit 10, I said, you know what? We're going to find out if this is going to be a game in the first couple of minutes in the second half. And I thought Gonzaga would hit those shots, and they didn't. And they had some good open looks in the first 2-3 minutes of that second half. Butler hit those threes, and that was the ball game. And it was over.
No, for sure.
It was over. Everything else after that was window dressing.
Right. And Adam, I think Baylor had like a period where five minutes of the second half they didn't hit a shot.
Yeah.
And it was never more than 9 points. And all of a sudden it got back to 16, and they were demoralized. You can see it in their faces. I think that UCLA game going into overtime, the win, the dramatic win, it took a lot of their emotions out of this game. I mean, they just look like a different team coming out there. All year they've been the aggressor, like you guys said right before my call. And Baylor was just a better team. I mean, that's all you got to give it up to. I mean, they had a plan. They couldn't stop their guard play, and it is what it is. But I wanted a better game, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I was disappointed in the game. I really was. I thought it was going to be much more competitive. And, I said yesterday in the entire show and in the lock of the night, 30 minutes of competition, and then Gonzaga distances itself late. And that wasn't even close to being correct. John in Canada, our good friend. Next, Schein on Sports.
Hey, Adam. Happy Tuesday to you.
Happy Tuesday to you, Johnny. What's cooking?
Oh, I just want to comment. I always love listening to your show because I listen to a lot of American sports talk radio, and nobody gives any respect to the Toronto Blue Jays like you do. You call a spade as much as you love the Yankees and you're a homer and you go by it. You give credit where it's due.
Listen, I appreciate that, and that's what we always try to do is make sure that we give the proper credit. So, coming from you, John, that means the world. We're always going to be objective, and we're always going to be honest, and that really means a lot. Appreciate that.
They have been really impressive this year, that young core, and they really work pitchers. I am so impressed with the way those guys, they work counts, they wait for their pitch, and they're racking. They had another nice big win against Texas yesterday. Matz looked great coming off a season where he just looked absolutely ridiculous, like he just didn't even belong in the league, and it's just such a great thing to see.
Watching the Blue Jays rake is a treat. And this is not a fluke. This is not some random team that's, getting off to a hot start. John, we love the Blue Jays over. I'm obsessed with that lineup, and wait until Springer gets going. I mean, your Toronto Blue Jays are a machine. I think the pitching is going to be better than people think. I don't think it's a great rotation, but better than people think. losing the closer to injury before the season, problematic, but I think they have guys that you trust. And listen, that's why on Monday I didn't make a big deal about the Yankees. Because they lost against Toronto. And Toronto is one of those teams where Toronto's going to have a chance to win every series they play. That I expect the Toronto Blue Jays, with that young, fun offense, I expect them to find a way to make the playoffs.
Oh, I agree with you, and I'm really hoping for it because October baseball in this country is just such a wonderful thing. I also just want to mention one other thing. You probably won't have much knowledge of this, but 3 years ago today, in a little small town not too far from where I live, we had a tragic bus crash that wiped out 16 members of a junior hockey team.
I remember it well, yes.
Yeah. Today's the 3-year anniversary of it, and I just wanted to put a shout-out out there for all the Canadian listeners on your show because I know there's a lot of them, and they all call in every day that it's a heavy felt day for us around here.
Very well said, John, and that's something we will never forget, and our deepest condolences to everyone that lost a loved one 3 years ago on this day, and appreciate the telephone call. We will get into the very latest report from Adam Schefter on the Atlanta Falcons thinking with the 4th overall pick in the draft. And more of your outstanding telephone calls right after this.
It's Masters Week.